A remorseless killing machine or a pawn brainwashed into joining a conspiracy. When the world first saw him on 26/11, Kasab was every inch the hardened terrorist. This was when he was captured on camera by Mumbai photographer Sebastian D'Souza.
That day he had a gun, so naturally he was the king then. He could do whatever he wanted. That day his eyes were like, fiery,
वो लाहौर में पहले काम करते थे.
क्या नाम उनका?
अमीर.
अमीर के बाप का नाम क्या है?
शबान.
शाबान. और सरनेम? कसाब है क्या?
हाँ जी.
Hours later in custody, that mask had cracked. Out poured details of the operation, how the promise of money turned a poor farm boy from Faridkot, Pakistan into a jihadi foot soldier. With each court appearance, the impression changed. At first he was cocky, later he would cry, giggle. On one occasion he cried when confronted by the pictures at CST.
When I showed his lawyer the pictures, and this fellow was very impressed to see what it was, so he started bending all over and trying to get a glimpse of all those photographs that I had submitted. Yeah, and when he saw them, he knew now this was real evidence going against him, and then he felt sick. He felt sick and he didn't know what to do. And then after it, he started to cry and all.
11-year-old Devika Rotavan is the youngest witness in the case against Kasab. He shot her in the leg at CST.
आप जब कोर्ट में गई उसको देखा सामने, वो कैसे लग रहा था? वैसे ही उस दिन देखा था वैसे लग रहा था?
उस दिन के जैसे नहीं लग रहा था. वो बहुत नीचे गिरा हुआ था, पागल टाइप में. ऐसा लग रहा था कोई एक मारेगा गिर जाएगा.
Jail officials told NDTV that in custody, Kasab on occasions displayed signs of schizophrenia, like scratching against the wall and eating cement. So, is he mentally disturbed, as his behavior at times seems to suggest, a master strategist?
He is well-trained terrorist, well-trained, he knows कि कैसी सिचुएशन पे कैसा रहना है. He knows very well. He is well-trained. बहुत ही चालाक लड़का.
Among the few to have gained access to Kasab after he was captured is forensic psychiatrist Dr. Yusuf Machiswala.
There is some emotional upheaval happening, a breakdown happening. There might be, against fine, my game is up, everything is going against me. So better to own up.
I don't think there's any question about the fact that he's an extremely, in a sense, intelligent, manipulative person. And to some extent, he's been indoctrinated that what he has done has the sanction of God, and what he's doing will somehow give him a great amount of reward in his next life.
During the last few weeks, even right through the high-pitched arguments on his sentence, Kasab has appeared disinterested, aloof, almost as if he has nothing to do with the trial.
Since last about 2-3 months, he remains very silent in the court itself. But he is a very shrewd and callous person, had undergone the various type of training, including the intelligence training, and therefore I won't attach any importance to his movements in the court at present.
Is it a mask, and will it finally crack when he hears his fate in court on Thursday? In Mumbai with Rashmi Rajput, Shai Venkatraman for NDTV.
To give you a better understanding about what took place on November 26, 2008 in Mumbai, we have to revert back to a place in time which will give you a better understanding between the conflict between India and Pakistan. Since the partition of British India in 1947 and the subsequent creation of the dominions of India and Pakistan, the two countries have been involved in a number of wars, conflicts, and military standoffs. And a long-running dispute over Kashmir, along with cross-border terrorism, have been the predominant cause of conflict between the two states, with the exception of the Indo-Pakistan War of 1977, which occurred as a direct result of hostilities stemming from the Bangladesh Liberation War in eastern Pakistan. There have been a number of wars, including the Indio-Pakistan War of 1947, 1965, 1971, 1999. Other standing armed conflicts, including the insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, the Siachen conflict in 1984, the insurgency in Baluchistan, Operation Brass Stacks, which was the largest of its kind in South Asia, in which it conducted by India between November of 1986 and 1987, in which Pakistan mobilization and response raised tensions and fears that it could lead to another war between the two neighbors, the 2001 India-Pakistan standoff, and others. The two countries also have nuclear weapons, which makes them quite volatile toward one another. But what took place between those 3 days in November of 2008? Well, we'll have to revert back to a group of men. They started out as 24 or 26 people, according to Pakistan and India intelligence. A group of men who were receiving training in maritime warfare at a remote camp in the mountainous regions of Muzaffarabad in Pakistan. Part of the training was reported to have taken place at the Mangala Dam Reservoir in Pakistan. According to Indian and US media reports, the recruits went through a number of stages in training. The first was psychological. This involved indoctrination to Islamist jihadi ideas, including imagery of atrocities suffered by Muslims in India, Chechnya, Palestine, and across the globe. The second was basic combat. The group responsible is the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is basically a militant Islamist group, which was founded by Hafiz Saeed Abdul Azam and Zafar Iqbal during the Soviet-Afghan War. It is a Pakistan network. They gave these men basic combat training and methodology courses, which is called the Dora Am. The third is advanced training. Now a selected group out of that 26 were to undergo advanced combat training at a camp near Mantashara, which is a city capital of Manshehra district in the Khyber province in Pakistan. According to an unnamed source at the U.S. Department of Defense, this included advanced weapons and explosive training supervised by members of the Pakistan Army, along with survival training and further indoctrination. Lastly, commando training. The final group that was selected for this operation was selected for specialized commando tactics training and marine navigation training given to the Fayadeen unit selected in order to target Mumbai. Fayadeen is an Arabic term used to refer to various Islamic military groups willing to sacrifice themselves for a larger cause. From the recruits, 10 were handpicked for the Mumbai mission. They received training in swimming and sailing, besides the use of high-end weapons and explosives, under the supervision of Lashkar-e-Taiba commanders. According to a media report citing an unnamed former Department of Defense official, the intelligence agencies of the U.S. had determined that former officers from the Pakistan's army and the ISI agency assisted actively and continuously in the training. They were given blueprints for 4 targets: the Taj Palace Hotel, the Oberoi Trident, Nariman House, and the Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, which is a historic terminal train station in Mumbai. November 22nd, 2008, members of this group started in a small boat from Karachi. After traveling for about 40 minutes, they were shifted to a larger boat, the Al Husseini, which, according to one of the captured terrorists, the only surviving member of the group. Ajmal Kasab belonged to Zakir-ur-Rahman Lakibi, the chief commander of the Lashkar-e-Taiba. There were already 7 members on board, and the group spent the entire day on board the Al Husseini. November 23rd, 2008, Kasab noticed another boat docked next to the Al Husseini. This was an Indian registered fishing boat called the MV Kuber, which had 5 crew members. 4 crew members of the NG Kuber were shifted to the Al Husseini. These 4 crew members were later killed by the unit. The captain of the trawler, Amar Singh Solanki, was allowed to remain on board, and it was he who navigated the Kuber into Mumbai. Now there were 10 members that were given their individual backpacks containing a Kalashnikov, ammunition, 9mm pistols, hand grenades, dry fruits. They were also handed over a bag each which contained an IED, an improvised explosive device. The unit performed watch duties on board the Kuber. Log sheets maintained by them have been seized. When the Kuber reached a point 4 nautical miles off Mumbai on November 26, 2008. As soon as it was dark, the team leader, Ismail Khan, contacted their handler in Pakistan, who directed them to kill the captain. After killing Solansky, the 10 men, along with their weapons and IEDs, boarded the inflatable dinghy. They traversed the last 4 nautical miles to Mumbai in about an hour and 50 minutes, reaching the locality of the Badhwar Park in southern Mumbai. After aligning, the 10 men divided into 5 teams, according to the pairing decided earlier. Muhammad Ajmal Amir Kasab was paired with the group leader Ismail Khan. They took taxis to different target destinations. IED devices were planted in 2 taxis and they later exploded, one at the Wildale Bunder and the other at Violet Par, killing the 2 taxi drivers. The train terminus was attacked by 2 gunmen, Khan and Kasab. The attacks took place at 21:30 when the 2 men entered the passenger hall and opened fire using AK-47 rifles. The attackers killed 58 people and injured 104. Security forces and emergency services arrived shortly afterwards. Announcements by a railway announcer alerted passengers to leave the station, that saved many lives. The 2 gunmen fled the scene and fired at pedestrians and police officers in the streets, killing 8 police officers. The attackers passed the police station. Knowing that they were outgunned against the heavily armed terrorists, the police officers at the station, instead of confronting them, decided to switch off the lights to secure the gates. The attackers then headed towards the Cama Hospital with intent to kill patients, but the hospital staff locked all of the patient wards. A team of the Mumbai anti-terrorist squad, led by police chief Hemnat Kahari, searched the terminus and then left in pursuit of Kasab and Khan, in which they opened fire on the vehicle in a lane next to the hospital and received return fire response. 4 people, including officers, were killed. The only survivor was severely wounded. Kasab and Khan seized the police vehicle, but later abandoned it and seized the passenger car instead. They then ran into a police roadblock, which had been set up after Jadhav radio for help. A gun battle then ensued, in which Khan was killed and Kasab was wounded. After a physical struggle, Kasab was arrested. A police officer, Chakaram Monabli, was also killed when he tried to disarm Kasab by wresting his weapon away from him. Another unit, led by Abu Umair and Shoaib, attacked the Leopold Cafe, a popular restaurant and bar at the Causeway in southern Mumbai. Both men opened fire on the cafe, on November 28th, killing 10 people, including over 26 injured. The Taj Mahal, in which 4 terrorists, Sohaib and Javad, the 2 who attacked the Leopold Cafe and bar, and Hafiz Arshad and Nasir, all went and entered the main lobby at 28:38 hours and opened fire, killing 20 people in the first few minutes. The first pair, Shohab and Javed, entered the hotel from the North Court entrance and fired indiscriminately and hurled grenades. Then Hafez, Sharad, and Nasir entered, moving up to the 6th floor at the Heritage Wing, killing anyone who came in their way. They set fire to a portion of the hotel. The 1st, 5th, and 6th floors of the wing were badly gutted. Some of these events have been captured on CCTV cameras installed in the hotel. Members of the group kept in constant contact with someone in Pakistan. Eight police personnel from the local police station rushed to the hotel and cordoned off the area. Thereafter, commandos of the Indian Navy reached the hotel. The next morning, the National Security Guard flew in from Delhi and took charge of the operations. It was a hostage situation because many guests had locked themselves in their rooms and many were sequestered in different parts of the hotel. The operations continued until the morning of November 29th, in which nearly 450 guests were rescued. The remaining survivors of the unit killed 32 persons, including hotel guests and staffs. A major of the National Security Guard were killed, and other commandos were injured. At the end of the operations, the 4 men were killed. The police recovered 4 Kalashnikovs assault rifles, 8 magazines, 3 pistols and magazines, a number of unexploded grenades, live and empty cases of ammunition, mobile telephones, and 1 GPS instrument. Throughout the period, 1 member of the unit kept in touch with their controllers in Pakistan via telephone. They received a stream of instructions, and it was apparent that the controllers were monitoring Indian television channels. The controllers were keen that the terrorists should take hostage some wazirs, meaning ministers, who might have been present in the hotel. Another unit of the group targeted the Oberoi Trident Hotel. The hotel had 2 wings, one named the Oberoi and the other Trident, in which there were 877 rooms. At about hour 22 hours, Abdul Rahman Chota and Fahadullah, the 2 men involved with the unit, entered the Trident Hotel through the main entrance and started firing indiscriminately. They crossed over to the Oberoi and sprayed bullets into a restaurant. 2 IEDs were exploded, and the 2 men moved to the upper floors of the Oberoi, killing guests and staff who came in their way. Finally, they holed up on the 16th and 18th floors, where they kept many guests hostage. NSG commandos took charge of the operation on the morning of November 27th. The operations were concluded after 42 hours on the afternoon of November 28th, and both men of the unit were killed. In the attack, overall at the hotel, 33 people were killed. Finally, the last unit, the Nariman House, a 5-story building which had been purchased 2 years ago by an Orthodox Jewish organization called the Chabad Liberation Movement of Hasidic Jews. It was renamed the Chabad House. At hours 22:25, 2 men of the unit, Barbar Imran and Nazrir, began firing outside the Chabad House and gained access to the building. Several people were taken hostages. The 2 men and the police exchanged fire throughout the night of November 26th and into the next day. A powerful IED explosion blew away the wall at the rear of the Nariman House. During the operations, the police rescued 14 people from the Chabad House. The maidservant of the rabbi also escaped carrying the rabbi's 2-year-old son. The NSG pressed helicopters into service and landed commandos on the terrace of the Chabad House, and eventually entered a shootout between the two men. The two men in the unit were killed. One SG commando was killed and 2 injured. However, 5 hostages were found dead. Throughout the operation, the 2 men received instructions over telephone from their controllers in Pakistan. The controllers warned the terrorists about the use of helicopters and about the landing of the commandos on the terrorists. The police recovered 2 Kalashnikov rifles, 4 magazines, 3 pistols, about 250 live rounds of ammunition, 4 phones, and 1 GPS instrument. During the investigation afterwards, the Mumbai attacks were later planned and directed by members of the Lashkar-e-Taiba militants inside Pakistan. In July of 2009, Pakistani authorities confirmed that the Lashkar-e-Taiba plotted and financed the attacks from camps in Karachi and Tata. In November of 2009, Pakistan authorities charged 7 men they arrested earlier of planning and executing the assault. According to an ABC News report on November 25th, 2009, quote, the police chief in the largest city in southern Punjab, from where Lashkar-e-Taiba and other jihadi groups recruit, acknowledged in an interview with ABC News earlier this year that militant groups had created a nexus from the tribal areas in Pakistan's northwest to the fertile farmlands near the Indian border in the east. They have been banned by the government, but they have their outfits. They change their name, and they come to another organization because their ideology is there. You can't kill the ideology. You can't stop it unless measures are taken to convince them. Those charged with the group were Zaki-ur-Rahman Laibi, the operational commander of Lashkar-e-Taiba, and Zarar Shah, considered a communications expert within the group, end quote. In April of 2011, the United States issued arrest warrants for 4 Pakistani men as suspects in the attack. The men, Saeed Mir, Abu Kafari Mazar, Iqbal, are believed to be members of Lashkar-e-Taiba and helped plan and train the attackers. Pakistan Prime Minister Yusuf Yaza Gilani and President Asif Ali Zandani condemned the attacks, and Pakistan promised to assist in the investigation and vowed strong action against any Pakistan elements found involved in the attacks. One member of the group, Ajmal Kasab, who was found guilty, was later executed for his part in the slaughter at the Mumbai train station. In 2018, during an interview with newspaper Dawn, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif reportedly indirectly accepted Pakistan's involvement in not preventing the Mumbai attacks. According to investigations, the attackers traveled by sea across the Arabian Sea, hijacked the Indian fisher Kuber, and killed the crew, which led to a number of different people being killed along the way. U.S. officials believed that the Pakistan ISI officers provided support to the Lashkar-e-Taiba militants who carried out the attacks. Disclosures made by former American intelligence contractor Edward Snowden in 2013 revealed that the Central Intelligence Agency had intercepted communications between the Lashkar boat and the Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters in Pakistan-administered Kashmir and passed the alert to the RAM, or the Research and Analysis Wing in India, on November 18th, 8 days before the terrorists actually struck Mumbai. In the hours after the attack, the New York City Police Department sent Brandon Del Pozo, an official from their intelligence division, to investigate the incident in order to understand what vulnerabilities its methods posed for New York City. The attackers had planned the attack several months ahead of time and knew some areas well enough to vanish and reappear after security forces had left. Several sources have quoted Kasab telling the police that the group received help from Mumbai residents. the attackers used at least their 3 SIM cards purchased on the Indian side of the border with Bangladesh. There were also reports of a SIM card purchased in the United States in New Jersey. Police had also mentioned that Fahim Asnari, an Indian Lashkar operative who had been arrested in February of 2008, had scouted the Mumbai targets for the November attacks. Later, the police arrested 2 Indian suspects, Mukhtar Ahmad and Tausif Rehman, a resident of Kolkata. They supplied the SIM cards, one in Calcutta and the other in New Delhi. The attackers used satellite phone and cell phones to talk to each other as well as their handlers that were based in Pakistan. In transcripts intercepted by Indian authorities between the attackers and their handlers, the handlers provided the attackers with encouragement, tactical advice, and information gained from media coverage. The attackers used both personal cell phones and those obtained from their victims to communicate with each other and the news media. Although the attackers were encouraged to murder hostages, the attackers were in communication with the news media via cell phones to make demands in return for the release of hostages. This was believed to be done in order to further confuse Indian authorities that they were dealing with primarily a hostage situation. There were also indications that the attackers had been taking steroids. The gunmen who survived said that the attackers had used Google Earth to familiarize themselves with the location of buildings used in the attacks. There were 10 gunmen, 9 of whom were subsequently shot dead and 1 captured by security forces, Kasab. Witnesses reported that they seemed to be in their early 20s, wore black t-shirts and jeans, that they smiled and looked happy as they shot their victims. It was initially reported that some of the attackers were British citizens, but the Indian government later stated that there was no evidence to confirm this. On April 6, 2010, the Home Minister of Maharashtra state, which includes Mumbai, informed the assembly that the bodies of those 9 killed from the attacks were buried in a secret location in January 2010. The bodies had been in a mortuary of the Mumbai hospital after the Muslim clerics in the city refused to let them be buried on their grounds. A total of 175 people, including civilians, security personnel, and 9 of the attackers were killed in the attacks. Among the dead were 29 foreign nationals. The bodies of many of the dead hostages show signs of torture or disfigurement. A number of those kills were notable figures in business, media, and the security services. The chief minister of the Maharashtra, Vilaso Deshmukh, stated that 15 policemen and 2 National Security Guards commandos were killed. 3 railway officials were also killed. The Pradham Inquiry Commission, appointed by the Maharashtra government, produced a report that was tabled before the Legislative Assembly more than a year after the events. The report said the warlike attack was beyond the capacity to respond of any police force, but also found fault with the Mumbai Police Commissioner Hassan Ghafoor's lack of leadership during the crisis. The attacks further strained India's slowly recovering relationship with Pakistan. India's then External Affairs Minister, Pranab Mukherjee, declared that India may indulge in military strikes against terror camps in Pakistan to protect its territorial integrity. There were also after effects on the United States' relationship with both countries. The U.S.-led NATO war in Afghanistan and on the global war on terror. FBI Director Robert Mueller praised the unprecedented cooperation between American and Indian intelligence agencies over the Mumbai terrorist attack probe. However, Interpol Security General Ronald Noble said that Indian intelligence agencies did not share any information with Interpol. A new National Counterterrorism Center was proposed to be set up by then House Minister P. Chhatrapati as an office to collect, collate, summarize, integrate, analyze, coordinate, and report all information and inputs received from various intelligence agencies, state police departments, and other ministers and their departments. The remaining survivor of the group, Kasab, his trial was delayed due to legal issues, as many Indian lawyers were unwilling to represent him. His trial began on March 23, 2009, and he pled not guilty. On June 2010, Xavier, a child who had been shot in the leg during the attack, identified Kasab as one of the attackers during her testimony. He later would plead guilty on July 20, 2009. The judge found many of the 86 charges against him were not addressed in his confession, and therefore the trial continued. Kasab initially apologized for the attacks and said he deserved the death penalty for his crimes. But on December 18, 2009, he retracted his confession and said he had been forced by the police to make his confession. On May 3, 2010, Kasab was convicted of all 86 charges. He was found guilty of murder for directly killing 7 people, conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of 164 people killed in the 3-day terror siege, waging war against India, causing terror, and of conspiracy to murder 2 high-ranking police officials. On May 6, 2010, he was sentenced to death by hanging. However, he appealed his sentence at the High Court. On February 21, 2011, the Bombay High Court upheld the death sentence of Kasab. On August 29, 2012, the Indian Supreme Court upheld the death sentence for Kasab. The verdict followed 10 weeks of appeal hearings and was decided by a 2-judge Supreme Court panel. The panel rejected arguments that Kasab was denied a free and fair trial. And on November 21, 2012, Kasab was hanged. After these events, tourism for India was at a slow process. The reaction of the world stage was condemnation against Pakistan and their adherence to militant groups, which seemed to be aided not just from the intelligence services of the Pakistan ISI, but also at some levels of the federal government. To the victims involved in the group and their loved ones, forgiveness is an option, but to forget would be a crime against those who suffered from the attacks.